Good morning, folks. It's your Self Shift crew back for another Saturday morning podcast. Actually, on a beautiful Saturday morning on June 1st here in 2024. You got Patrick in the house, Derek,
Hey, good morning, everyone.
and of course Doug.
Hello.
Doug is a little bit on a binge this morning, so um, we got an interesting topic though today, and is one that was put on our list relatively recently, but it has a lot of applicability to a lot of the stuff that we talk about here with Self Shift, and that is action begets motivation. Again, action begets motivation, as opposed to motivation begetting action. And as usual, we're going to start out with a couple of quotes. We actually got 3 quotes today. The first is from Mark Twain. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking down your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one. Second, from Dale Carnegie, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit at home and think about it. Get out and get busy. And the last one, Walt Disney keeps popping up on our quotes over the last several podcasts, but this is a good one. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Again, very, very appropriate quotes as it relates to the topic that we have here today. So before we jump in, let's see. Doug, initial thoughts on this concept of action begetting motivation?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty powerful idea as far as, again, if you can just figure out some way to get started, a lot of times you'll pick up that motivation. You'll see that, actually doing something does create some progress, and you'll build confidence towards like your larger goal. So, totally agree that there's another quote that I always think about is the journey of 1,000 steps, or the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And so just like that first quote you were saying, if you can look at that overall thing you're trying to do, like get healthy, it's kind of hard to figure out how do I get healthy. But if every morning I'm going to walk for 5 minutes, you'll start to build a habit. You'll start to feel the rewards of just getting up and walking, and it'll build momentum into something bigger.
Yep. Derek, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think, one thing that rings true in my mind around this is, words without action means nothing. And so, we all can, in life we hear people talk a big game, or they talk a lot of things up, but and often you never see any actions to line behind the words, which will take you nowhere. So, I think that's the initial thoughts I have on this is something that, I work to live by is, if I'm going to say something, I'm going to do it, or I'm going to put the things in place to on that to make it happen.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I'm gonna riff on something you just said there, Derek. And I've used this in my professional career as well. But vision without action is hallucination. I think we used that, Doug, you and I, he meant it a couple of times. So that's really powerful. And I'll say that this concept, we all 3 of us, and probably folks listening on the podcast today, share a desire for self-improvement, improving ourselves and stuff like that. And a lot of the themes across stuff that we have studied and put into play really is reflected in this topic, right? In the sense that if you look at James Clear's Atomic Habits, or if you look at even at some of the psychological proven science like behavioral activation and self-perception theory and feedback loop things, this has not only is a cool quote or is a cool little saying, but it has science behind it. Right. And I've used it especially or in two ways. First of all, when there's something that I know that I need to get done, or I know that I need to start doing, like Doug, you mentioned the exercise and that type of thing, is although that's not a complex series of tasks, oh man, I could sit on the couch and watch YouTube videos, or I could whatever, right? But getting started, actually starting to walk half a K or a K or something like that, and then start jogging and then start running and stuff like that. The more that you do it, the more self-confidence that you get, and the better you start feeling about yourself, and it starts becoming a habit, right? The same with like lifting weights or even doing your taxes or whatever. Once you start taking action, things become easier. The second part of it, which has really been beneficial to me, is because I tend to see, and I think you too probably, given the fields that we all work in, is when we're presented with a problem, these are typically not trivial Problem is not the right word, but an opportunity. These are typically complex, software engineering types of things. So they're not easily just knocked out. And they can become overwhelming really, really quickly if you're looking, especially at a multi team project or even across an enterprise or whatever. And they can become daunting. They can become, just overwhelming. And you struggle to even to take the first step. As a matter of fact, this happened at me at work this week where I had to have my team break down things into very specific steps, which you should be doing anyway with, your stories and your stuff like that. But the team basically got in a place where we were building some reusable components, right, for our one of our web apps that we're building. And the reason for this is we want to be able to share these components across multiple manifestations of the same underlying technology, whether it be for this customer or this customer. The look and feel may be different, but the underlying components are the same, right? It relates to authentication and event logging and stuff like that, right? And so the team got into this discussion about, we've got to get from A to Z, and we're still on step A. And step A was, I don't want to get like too geeky here, but do we set up a different source code repository for the shared components? And, so we had started breaking tasks down, and the discussions were just going on and on about the pros and cons of setting up, a separate software code repository versus a library in an existing repository. And they were all good conversations, but it was going somewhat circular. So to basically move beyond, we took action. Set up a new team, go ahead and set up a new repository. Let's get moving. If we need to, adjust or shift as we get into the project, we certainly can. But just making that taking that decisive action allowed the team to get over a hump, right? I know that's a really simplistic example, but the fact that at some point you got to stop talking, you got to start doing, and then they were out of the gate, right? So by Friday evening, they had, dropped stuff into the new source code repository. They were moving forward, and things were going really, really well. So again, an example of breaking things down and then taking actions. We got to stop talking at some point, and we got to start taking action, even if we have to adjust a little bit later. Thoughts in your lives or work lives or careers or whatever. Derek, something's coming out. Go ahead, man.
Well, I think that, similar to you, I sit in a lot of meetings in the IT profession. I hear a lot of people talk and share PowerPoints, and they go through their points and they talk about, a lot of things they're going to do. But then in some instances, I see very little progress forward, because I think one of the things I've learned around this topic is, people will avoid accountability by not taking action. And I think that, in the IT profession, a lot of teams will avoid having to be accountable to someone because they don't want to have to deliver something, because either they can't, or they won't, or they can't be efficient in that. For me, it's about, you know if you're going to do something and you say you're going to do something, then do it. I mean, that's what I've had to do in my healing journey personally. That's what I've had to do if I wanted to get in shape or accomplish a fitness goal, in my life, or if I want to just even mow the grass. The grass is not going to mow itself. I got to get the lawnmower gassed up. I got to pull the, get it started, pull the cord, and I got to start it, and I got to mow the grass. It's a very simple, practical example, but it takes action on your part.
Definitely. Doug?
Yeah, no. I'm going to start at like the benefit or the long-term thing is like, when you start to take action, you start to feel the value of the action. It all kind of builds that momentum. And I don't know about you all, but some of my best days and work or personal is when I get into that state of flow where you're really enjoying what you're working on. Your mind's really engaged. You're learning. You feel the progress that you're making, and so sometimes when I think about like I'm overwhelmed with something I have to define at work, which is a broad nebulous strategy and all these kind of things, I think ahead to my my future self, and I think about like getting into a state of flow around those things, and I say like the only way I ever get there is if I get started, right? And so breaking the inertia, like inertia is such a powerful force, right? And I look around at a lot of sedentary kids today that, that spend a lot of their time not really being very active. And, I just think like if they could just get started, if they could just like feel the benefit of getting active, if they could just take those first steps, they'll get into some momentum and they'll lead towards those times when they reach flow and those things. A little bit net circular there, but again, if just taking that first step, just breaking that inertia is so powerful.
Yeah, no, I think you made some really good points, especially about future self, because I use that, the concept from psychology. Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote a really good book called Be Your Future Self Now, about, how your future self is pulling you forward, right? Pulling you into where you need to be. So I've applied a lot of that concepts as it relates to this topic, exactly the way you described. Another example is like when I first started, going to the gym several years ago, is I literally would go for 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, right? And just to get into the practice of, in 6 months, this is really going to benefit me. What I'm doing today is going to manifest something good 60 days, 90 days out, right? Or 180 days, 12 months out, whatever. And using that concept of visualizing your future self and taking small incremental stuff builds on itself. You start building, confidence. You start getting, honestly, a bit of a dopamine hit as well, right? Because you're doing something, you're proud of yourself, and you're moving forward. So I've used those concepts, as I said, going to the gym. And also, they've been really beneficial to me at work because, I do tend to procrastinate, especially on things that I think are going to be confrontational or whatever, right? I don't go out of my way to look for confrontational things. But I find that when I take some action, like schedule the meeting, we're going to talk about this, we're going to resolve it in 30 minutes, it usually works. And, you start getting some movement behind it, like I was talking about with that repo or repository, a little while ago, is once you start just taking some action, you really start moving forward. And I'm going to draw this back to something we say at the end of most of our podcasts, and it's really appropriate here, right? Is the concept of accepting what is, right? You don't control the outcomes, you don't always control your situation, but you are absolutely responsible for your actions and moving things forward, right? That is your responsibility. You may have not caused the situation, but if it impacts you or impacts those around you, you are responsible for moving that forward. So the concept of accepting what is, aligning with your core values, right? And it's really critical that we talk about, or that you understand what your core values are, and then taking committed action aligned to those core values. Even if it starts out at, 5 minutes at the gym, or scheduling that meeting that is going to be unpleasant, or having that conversation that with your children or your spouse or your friends that may be a little bit tough, or getting up 15 minutes earlier or whatever. Taking some action that is aligned with your values is a self-reinforcing thing that, from my perspective and the science that we talked about earlier behind it, really moves things forward. So accept what is, align with your core values, and take committed action. Very, very powerful. And it's kind of the motto that I live my life by at this point.
Yeah. I would add one thing. Yesterday, my motivational quote on my desk was in alignment with accept what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. And I think that's, a good way to remember exactly what you're sharing, how, if we want something different in our life, we have to be willing to, accept where you are right now and the situation you may be in, and work towards letting that go through finding a way forward with connecting back to a new vision for your life, a purpose for your life, some values, and then, just putting yourself out there and having that faith that it's going to take you where you want to be 6 months from now or 8 months or a year from now. Often, I think we as humans have the gravitational pull to sabotage ourselves in our actions too. So we say, well, I'm going to go out and lose 10 pounds, and I want to lose 10 pounds in 3 months. But every day we go out and eat Big Macs and grab some milkshakes and large fries, and we do that a couple times in a day. Well, I'm not certain that's going to take you to your goal of losing 10 pounds in 3 months. So I think that's a good point there to remember is, when you set the wheels in motion to go forward to some direction, you're still going to have gravitational pull to sabotage yourself with certain actions. So you got to be aware of that as well.
And I think, Derek, an example that you just described, or that you were going to, and I'm going to double click on it, is learning to drive past McDonald's.
Yeah.
And this is not a ding on McDonald's in any way, shape, or
No.
form,
Yeah.
but
Right.
and they're brilliant in their advertising and that type of thing.
Absolutely.
You see the signs miles ahead, but getting just like a simple committed action is, I'm going to drive past it, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to stop and buy, like, supersized Big Mac or
Yeah.
whatever you're
Yeah.
saying. That is committed action. Your value is health. Your goal is losing 10 pounds or whatever. And then an action aligned with that goal is driving past McDonald's, right? And
Yeah.
maybe next week you drive past McDonald's, you go to Planet Fitness, something like
Yeah.
that. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll share, again, I think ever since I've been an adult, I felt like,
hold on. You're an adult?
yeah.
Okay.
And I guess it goes back to understanding your values and your identity, right? Like I've wanted to be a morning person, like, for countless attempts and countless reasons. Like you think, hey, that's the best time of the day to kind of get up and get going. It's before I get busy at work. I could, fit this in. I could do this reading. I could do these different things. And I've, it's about the journey, I guess, to try these things, because you read about, okay, here's how I could do a small thing like put my workout clothes in my shoes, right there next to in the closet when I get up, and I try that. And so you try a lot of different small actions and things like that. But going back to your earlier point about understanding your identity and your values, you're doing it for the right reasons, but maybe you don't succeed. But what I'll say is I learned a lot in the journey that has helped me elsewhere. So like going towards the idea of I want to be a happier person, or I want to be happier at work. And I've talked about this on other episodes, but that was a long journey, and it required, trying different things. But once I started to do some mindfulness on a daily basis, and I started with 5 minutes and then 10 minutes, and I didn't really feel the value for a little bit, but then I finally felt the value. And now it's, now that's ingrained in my identity and values, as far as like stepping back and observing and, separating myself from the outcome and those kind of things. So again, I think it's not, we're not here saying this is an easy thing to do. We're saying like, you should try it in all the different things, but you may not succeed over here, but you'll succeed over there. I don't know.
Yeah, no, totally get it, man. And something you said there, it's fully committed, totally detached is a concept. It's great to be fully committed to these goals and these values and stuff like that. But again, you've got to be detached, because you don't control the outcome, and you shouldn't let the outcome that you wanted but maybe did not achieve detract from the fact that you put the effort in, that you aligned with your values, and you took action. And I will add one more thing to riff on that a little bit, is the actions should have integrity, right? So integrous action. I've been reading some, material recently by some really, really good authors and psychologists and stuff, that integrity is one of the key things to end suffering. Because if you are acting with integrity towards yourself, and again, that means accepting what is, aligning with your core values, which hopefully have some integrity or should be integrous, and taking committed action, you really can't go wrong, right? And so, the fact that the action, the small actions that you're taking are have integrity to what you want to be, to your future self, to being a better human, better member of the community, whatever, even if people don't recognize it, as long as you're acting with integrity, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, now add to that, when you start acting with integrity, you're gonna become, it'll feel very isolated and lonely, because you experience so many people that don't act in integrity often, and they have, not so good intent in as far as like, maybe it's a relationship, or it's a business deal, or it's a project you're doing. So you have to watch that, because when you start taking a stand for your integrity and what you value, you will have a lot of people and situations and circumstances that come against you, whether it's family, professionals, or, just friends. And so, I call it the undoing of self. When you start living in integrity and walking in your values and what you know to be your purpose, you will have a lot of people that will be against that. Just be very aware of that.
I'll throw one other concept in here, and maybe it relates to, again, friends and family. And again, when you do good things and others see it, like something interacting with you guys on a regular basis and talking through those things, like seeing you all take action in different things inspires me, right? And then when we talk about taking action, hopefully it inspires others, right? So like, there's benefit and value for us of taking action, and then there's like that network effect
Yeah.
of inspiring others or being inspired by others.
Yeah, no, I see that all the time, Doug, and especially like even little things that, in the office, like for example, I'm big into intermittent fasting, right? And when people are in the office, including my coworkers, even my boss, will notice, hey, doesn't eat lunch or whatever, and then they'll start asking, and then they'll start taking action, right? And a lot of these folks have lost significant amount of weight, got back in the gym and stuff like that, just because I'm not advertising, I'm not promoting, I'm just showing, right? I'm doing it, I'm taking the action, right? So, so action, not promotion, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that's been I've seen that in many different things, like going to the gym, and even some of the things, the way that I conduct meetings, for example, taking action to keep it calm, keep it non-confrontational, that type of thing. It becomes almost contagious, right? When people see the benefit of these committed actions, they tend to jump on it. And one of the other things, again, we've talked about it a little bit earlier, is the concept of this is not just Patrick, Derek, and Doug putting this out there, right? I'm actually looking at the science right now. And one of the concepts that all three of us, have studied, and I'm sure others that are listening to the podcast, is the concept of neuroplasticity, right? Is that your brain rewires itself based upon your activities, based upon your actions, and that type of thing. So, although, like Doug mentioned, the initial inertia, you got to get going, right? You got to take something small. But once you start doing that, your body, your brain, your mind, your subconscious sees that and starts wiring to make it, move it forward and to reinforce that behavior. So it becomes a habit. And then over time, it just becomes part of your identity. And, identity based, values and identity based goals and identity based habits, we've talked a little bit about on this podcast. I'm sure we'll come back to it. But all of these things tie together. So good stuff. And we are getting close on time. So let's go around the horn, give some last thoughts, and then we will call it a day. Derek.
Yeah, I think I would just say to the listeners, you are worth the investment of taking whatever action you need to declare and have the life that you want. And you can do it. I think that, often, a lot of people find themselves in tough situations, or they feel like there's no hope, or they're in a very dark spot. But again, everything we've been saying, take one small action that's going to take you where you want to be tomorrow, and do it now. Do it today. Don't wait. And that's what I'll just say. And you got it. You can do it, and make it happen for yourself.
I'll just say, don't underestimate the value of taking those tiny micro actions. Like, again, if you want to be a writer, set aside a minute a day and write, and build confidence, build momentum, see progress, do those things. And then the last thing I'll say is, like, be kind to yourself. Because like I was saying, I'm failing to be a morning person, but I've, improved in so many other ways. So.
Excellent. Excellent. All righty. So let's just close it out here. And again, just to reinforce what we've talked about today, accept what is, align with your integrity-based values, and then take committed action aligning to those values, even if it's a really, really small step forward.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, in the eternal words of Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. Thank you guys, and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.